Okay, guys, we've got episode 7 of Off the Sidelines Property Podcast here, and we've got a special guest on today. We've got Wally from Granny Flat Solutions, probably one of the biggest granny flat providers I've ever seen. And when I walked in the office, they've got more awards than I've had hot dinners. So yeah, we've got Wally on, which we're going to get him to talk about granny flats and how they can help and assist in building some wealth, and also just creating some extra streams of income, and also having opportunities to be able to live in locations they want instead of having to move too far out with the cost of building. And I've also got Onis, my co-host here.
Hi guys, thank you for joining us on another episode of Off the Sidelines Property Podcast. It's always a pleasure to provide value to our listeners, and yeah, I'll get Wally to introduce himself and tell us a bit about what he does and how he got started with Granny Flat Solutions. So Wally, over to you.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks for having me on the show. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Wally Gerbrael. I'm one of the owners here at Granny Flat Solutions. We started Granny Flat Solutions back in 2011. It started off as a little side hustle. We had this idea when the government introduced the Affordable Housing Code. We had this idea, hey, we should get on board with this because they're encouraging affordable housing. They're encouraging small houses and smart living. So, you know, with our background, so my background myself, I've studied architecture and building, and spoke to my brother-in-laws who've got marketing, sales backgrounds and construction knowledge and experience, and we thought, hey, this is a great idea. Let's set up a little side hustle, see how we go. You know, let's keep our businesses running and just start promoting granny flats to see what happens. So we started doing that back in 2011.
Yep.
And at the time, it was quite a foreign idea to a lot of people. So we'd go around talking to people, say, hey, why don't you put a granny flat in your backyard and rent it out? And they'd say, a granny flat? No, we don't have a granny. You know, and that was honestly what people were thinking.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking of, hey, we don't want to convert our garages, or maybe we can convert our garages. So we were educating people, and they'll say, no, this is, it's not the right thing for us. I think at the time it was still quite new.
Yeah.
But over time, it's developed, and people started to learn about it themselves, and they're seeing a lot of media coverage and the benefits. And we've grown from 2011 to doing 8 granny flats in our first year to now averaging at least 220 to 250 granny flats every year.
Wow, that's massive.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
How many have you currently got in the pipeline at the moment?
At any time, we have about 70 to 80 projects in construction.
Wow.
And that's at all different stages, from pouring a slab or demolition right through to handover. And in design and pre-construction, there's always at least 120 to 150 projects going through that process.
And a lot of people don't realise now that you don't have to go to council to get your granny flat approved anymore and wait 6 to 12 years for a council approval to get done because they've wanted you to change a capital letter in one of the applications. Now there's a thing called CDC. And a lot of people don't really know about that. I've talked to heaps of people in the past, and they're like, what's a CDC? Don't you have to go through council? It's too hard. It takes all this sort of stuff. So can you enlighten the audience a bit about the CDC process and how that's
sure. Absolutely. So CDC is basically like a checklist. That's the best way to put it. There are rules, and as long as we tick every one of those boxes, as long as we comply with our setbacks, our heights, our landscaping ratios and so on, it's an automatic approval.
Wow.
And we use private certifiers who are accredited certifiers to issue an approval. And the one thing people get afraid of is they think that because it's been approved by someone other than council that it's not legal.
Yep.
But that's incorrect, because even when the certifier issues an approval, he still lodges that with council.
Right,
so it's still recorded with them, and anybody who ever inquires will also, it'll be listed there as an approved development.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's actually a qualified certifier that has the same authority or similar to council. It's not Uncle Bob saying, yeah, you can build a granny flat down the back. No worries, no one will notice.
Exactly right, yeah. And they are governed by very strict guidelines as well. So, for example, with council, you could try to argue with them, say, hey, look, my neighbour managed to go a little bit further back. Can you allow me to do the same, and so on? And council will use discretion and might say, yeah, you know what, you're right, we'll let you do it.
Yeah.
With a certifier, it's very, very strict. If it doesn't meet that setback, they got no discretion. They can't use what they think, I think it'll be okay to get it approved. It's very, very strict guidelines.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot faster and quicker and cheaper.
Yeah, and the process is a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And Wally, would you say that all councils are equal? So would a granny flat get approved in one council area in comparing it to another, or would you say that it's a blanket rule with granny flats across the country or in New South Wales at least?
Yeah, so if you're using a CDC, it is a blanket rule. It doesn't matter what council area you're in New South Wales, it's the same rules in every council.
Yeah.
If you are going through council through a DA process, they do have different rules.
Right.
Some councils are a bit stricter. They might, I'll give you an example. If you're in a rural area, say in Hornsby or in Ku-ring-gai councils, they actually allow you to build larger granny flats than 60 square metres because of the land size you have and things like that.
For sure.
Whereas if you go down to suburban councils like, say, Parramatta or Holroyd or Fairfield and so on, then they're going to be a lot stricter.
Yeah.
They'll lay up to 60 square metres maximum, but that's it.
Yeah.
You can't really push the envelope.
Okay. And you mentioned something earlier about the housing code. If you could shed a bit of light on that and what that kind of meant for you and your business starting out.
Yep. So the housing code, well, formerly it was called the Affordable Rental Housing Code.
Right. Yeah.
With the word affordable housing in there. And the idea there was government, or New South Wales government at the time, encouraging affordable housing. Clearly there's been a lack of housing and affordable housing
that's right.
for some time now. So this was a good catalyst to get people started and thinking about it. For me, I read that as, so my background, like I mentioned before, has always been design and construction, and I love designing small. I love small spaces and being creative with the space you've got and trying to make something work. So to me, it was like, hey, granny flats, small buildings, this is a great opportunity. And that for me was one of the catalysts for me jumping on board. But it was obviously pre-planning and thinking from governments prior to that time to get that code up and running and so on. So, but it has been a big change. It's been a game changer.
Yeah.
For the industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of you churning out a whole granny flat, how long has that process taken you now? So someone comes in, hey, Wally, I want a granny flat. What's that process like currently?
An average project takes about 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's in designing, approvals, engineers, certifiers, councils, and then the whole construction process. So it's a mix of about 3 months in design and approval and roughly about 3 months in construction as well.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And in relation to the design and approval, like we're in the showroom here now, and it looks like an actual like building house showroom. Like I guess a lot of people think for a granny flat, you're just going to get some little demountable that a crane's going to come in, and it used to be on a construction site and probably smells like cigarettes or something. And that's sort of the stigma of granny flats, I guess. But you guys have showrooms here. You can put shutters in. You can have sensor lights. You can have your own kitchen. Like it's like a mini house, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is that. And the process of building a house and a granny flat are absolutely the same. You can choose the same products and materials you put in your home, and you can do the exact same in a granny flat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just smaller. But you're still, you're still pouring a slab on site. You're still putting up frames and cladding and insulation. And so we're still bound by the same rules. Even basics and energy efficiency, we're still bound by the exact same rules. At the end of the day, it's the class 1 building. It's a habitable space, so it has to comply with building codes.
And in terms of bedrooms, what sort of bedrooms could you go up to in granny flats? Are they just like studios or one bedders, or what do you guys sort of do?
It's a range between 1 and... So the most common is 2 bedrooms. So in a 60 square metre, you imagine a small apartment. You can comfortably fit 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, open plan, living, dining, kitchen. So 60 square metres, 2 bedrooms is very, very comfortable. We've done 1 bedders before, even at 60 square metres, where it might be, decent sized bedroom and then even larger living space. In saying that, we've also done 3 and 4 bedroom granny flats in the past too.
Oh, wow, okay.
But that might be for, say, a family who just really need the space for the kids. They don't really need the large open living areas. It might be more affordable to build a detached 4 bedrooms rather than trying to extend off the back of the house, which might be elevated or might have height restrictions, things like that. So we've had families who build that for family purposes, and the 4 bedrooms become 4 extra bedrooms for the family and 2 bathrooms.
Well,
that's awesome. And Wally, if you could just shed some light on the current guidelines regarding granny flats. So I know there's detached granny flats, there's attached ones, and possibly you could build a granny flat on a site that's less than 450 square meters. So if you can just give our viewers or listeners a bit of insight to that process, I think that's where the money is,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, as a general rule of thumb, the codes would say that you need a minimum of 450 square metres at a 12 metre wide frontage. And that is the general rule, and that's what we work off. 99% of our projects, or 95% of the projects are, as long as we meet those minimum guidelines and the minimum lot areas, then technically you can build a granny flat.
Yeah.
There's no parking requirements for granny flats, so you don't have to provide a garage. So you could have, your typical suburban property where you've got a metre wide access on both sides. You can still fit a granny flat there.
Oh. Well.
So there's no parking requirements, which is great. They're typically 1 story and typically detached. That's what you see most builders doing. However, you can attach them to the back of the house or the side. You can even build above the house.
Wow.
It does change the category of building. It does become a lot more complicated with fire rating and rules and regulations. So we as a company typically don't do first floor granny flats, but they are permissible. Mm-hmm. You can also build 2-story granny flats.
Yep.
So still a combined 60 square meters, but hypothetically 30 on the ground floor, 30 on top floor.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
And they've got greater setback requirements because you're further away from, because the taller you go, the further away from boundaries you need to be.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned before, granny flats on blocks less than 450 square meters. So when you read through those CDC guidelines or the codes, it's pretty explicit when it says 450 square meters is the minimum. But then there are also some other areas where if you keep reading through, they talk about exceptions to the rules.
Right, okay.
There's a certain section which talks about minimum lot areas. And it says that a certifying authority, be it council or certifiers, cannot reject a granny flat if it's under 450 square meters, if it forms part of the existing dwelling.
Okay.
Right, okay.
So when you interpret that and you start looking into it further, it basically says that if I had a house on a block of land, which let's call it 350 square meters, and I attach a granny flat to it, technically they still have to approve it. So what a lot of people are doing, rather than just attaching it as sorry, I'll go back to that in a sec. You can actually, as I said before, you can actually do a little extension of the back of your house. It gets approved as an extension.
Yep.
And then you go back and you apply to have that converted into a granny flat. So the 450 square meter rule still applies, but if it's existing, it doesn't. So if that makes sense, you extend the back of your house as an extension, and then you go back and you convert that into a granny flat. And that's 100% permissible because now it's an existing structure or it's part of the under the main roof of the existing house.
Yeah.
So the same applies then to new dwellings as well. So if you've got a block of land less than 450 square meters, and we do a lot of this, and you go out to a lot of the greenfield suburbs, Oran Park and the other southwest corridor, things like that. A lot of people are doing that. The blocks of land are always 250, 300, 350 square meters.
Correct.
You could build a house, and with that house, what we normally do is we'll allocate in the design a section of it that we know can be converted to a granny flat later. So we'll get this approved as a single dwelling, get it all finalised, get the final occupation certificate, and then go back and apply to have that section of the back of the house there converted into a granny flat.
Okay.
And the same rules apply because it's an existing structure now, and therefore the 450 square metre rule is overruled.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
But if that makes sense? But
Yeah, absolutely. That makes heaps of sense. You just went about it and met all the guidelines, but just went and followed them all to get the same result.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. And I like that. It's very creative.
Really creative. I like that too. Yeah. So, awesome. Have you got any case studies, interesting case studies on that? Would you extend a building on its own accord, or would there be like a rumpus area that you'd further extend? So this extension, would it just be a completely new thing, or is it existing?
Could be both.
Right.
The thing to look out for if you're trying to convert an existing part of a building, it's a lot more complicated. There's fire rating requirements, which are harder to achieve if the building's already there. So with fire rating, there's a wall that separates the granny flat from the rest of the house. Okay. And that has to be at least a minimum of 60 minutes of fire. Be able to withstand fire for at least 60 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So to construct a wall using different materials to withstand 60 minutes of intense fire, it's not just a matter of just placing a piece of gyprock on that wall. It needs to go right down through the footings and up through the roof and things like that. So trying to extend up the back of the house to achieve that, it could be quite costly and complicated. The ones where we've done have typically been new builds, or we have actually done it in a few. I think we did it in the Concord only last year, but it's a very easy attachment on the back of the house. Okay. So we did it as an extension. We punched a hole through the back wall, put it through as an extension of the back of the house, and then after it was all finalised, we went back, closed off that wall again, because because it was a double brick wall already, that meets the 60 minutes of fire rating. So it was a very, very easy attachment to do.
Okay, awesome.
But the trick there is to design that extension as if it was going to be a granny flat. So you'd make it an easy conversion later.
Right.
So all you got to do is
Gotcha.
go back in later, put in a kitchen and laundry.
Yeah.
Because the bathroom's already there, the bedroom's already there. It's just a matter of adding those few more services, which you can't do as an extension, but as a granny flat you can.
Right, that's really interesting and
So as long as we know from the beginning, we can provide advice of different solutions and ways to achieve things, and design it in a way that's going to be the most cost-effective solution when you do come back to convert it to a granny flat in the future.
Sounds like you need a doctorate in granny flats just to get around all the policies.
The codes are not easy to interpret, but we've been doing it for a long time. So,
Or just come to Wally, he's got it all down pat.
That's right. Oh, awesome. And Wally, I want to pick your brains about sustainability and what you're seeing in the small home space right now, because people are, requesting solar panels. There's plants and landscaping to kind of all fit into a person's lifestyle. So you've got more insight into that space. What are you noticing?
I think there is a bit of a trend at the moment. There's a bit of a push towards sustainability, whether it's through the media or through, you hear about climate change, you hear about all this, that people are starting to think about it and take it a bit more seriously. So that extends into homes as well. So there's a thing called breathable homes or healthy living homes or sustainable homes. It's just in the way it's constructed, and we can build a granny flat, and we have done it. We've got a proven case study we did in French's Forest about 2 years ago, where we built a sustainable granny flat. And you look at it from the outside, it looks exactly the same as any other building. You wouldn't know, but it was just in the construction methodology.
Right.
It was the insulation we used. It was the air gaps we put between, say, the frame itself and the cladding, the condensation barriers we put in, the extra insulation around windows. You could also put in sensors in the roof that pick up when a building starts to heat up to a certain degree, and it opens up these louvers and lets hot air escape and things like that. So it's quite smart technology, but it's surprisingly not that much more expensive than people think. You need to add your rainwater tanks, grey-water tanks. And it depends how far you want to go, because you can go completely off the grid where you're not connecting anything, any town water and things like that. It just depends how far you want to go. But it's definitely achievable. And just because it's a granny flat or even a home, it's not that much more expensive to factor that into the construction at the early stages, rather than trying to retrofit a building later. Yeah,
wow.
And do you think the costs of that now would weigh up the savings in terms of like energy, electricity, that sort of stuff, and their health and things like that? Do you think it's worth looking at sustainable options?
I think it is. If you're serious about it and it's a building you want to live in for a very long time, I think it's definitely worth it. The reality is it does cost more to build. Yeah. So there's no sugarcoating it, make it sound like it's cheap, but it's not expensive either. I don't like using the word cheap, but it's not expensive. It's an investment, I say. Yeah. So yes, you are spending a little bit more on your sarking, on your insulation, and as I said before, putting in battens so you're not directly sticking your cladding onto your frame. So you're creating these air gaps, and you're doing all these little extra things that take a little bit longer and will cost more to build, but over a long period of time, you are going to be saving energy. And the big one is air conditioning. The fact that the building itself can pick up when it's getting hot and release hot air, or stop the cold air coming in, that itself means you don't use your air conditioner as much as you need to. Yeah, you might still need it, but you might only need it for an hour or two during the day rather than all
8
night
hours
or 8 hours. Yeah,
that's
so
right.
just that on its own already is starting to, is where some of the cost savings are.
Interesting.
And do you think, I don't know if it's just me, but I've noticed the last few years, granny flats have just gone berserk. Everyone's talking about them. Everyone wants them. Do you think it's the cost of building that sort of made people have to think, well, maybe we shouldn't be building a 200 square meter house down the back. Maybe we should do a 60 square granny and then get similar rent and then not have to pay the extra build costs? What have you found over the last few years?
I think that's been a big driving factor. Yeah. It is cheaper to build a 60 square meter house than it is a full-blown 200 square meter home. But the other interesting thing is everybody's got a backyard. Well, not everybody, but most people have a backyard.
Yep.
And it's cheaper we don't have to buy land anymore. You've got your backyard. So why not invest and put something there rather than go buy another block of land? and spend 30,000 plus in stamp duty, for example, and I mean there are proven case studies where people are renting out their granny flats. They're spending 100 to 150,000 roughly, and getting $400 minimum a week rent. When you do the maths on that, you go buy $1 million investment, you might get $1,000 a week rent, but when you do the maths on return on investment, it's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, but the yield's pretty high on that. It's like 20% just on its own.
There you go. So it's cheaper, it's more affordable. Banks are probably more likely to lend you 100, 150,000 than trying to service $1 million loan.
Yeah.
So there are definitely some benefits there and make it more attainable for a lot of people.
Yeah, nice. And Wally, when people come to you, are they typically getting granny flats through you with finance, or are people just, here, I've got 150 grand, I want a granny flat? How does that work? What's that process like for you?
It's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
A lot of people come to us with a pre-approval, so they know how much they can borrow, or they'll come to us at an earlier stage asking, can you give us a preliminary quote so we can go to our banks and find out if we can, they'll lend us the money. But we are always encourage them to reach out to the experts like yourselves.
For sure.
And say, go speak to these guys, and they'll be able to tell you not just, I mean, we work, as you guys know, we work together. We'll let you know what it costs from our end, but you guys help them. Sounds like I'm plugging your business now, but you guys will then help them to make it all work and fit together. So
well, that's the thing with the granny flats. Like, a lot of people don't realize, they think, well, like 150k, I don't have 150k, but they don't realize that it's the same as a construction loan for a house. All you need is 20%. So 20% of that's 30 grand. With the growth we've had in Sydney over the last few years, if someone doesn't have 20 or 30 grand in equity in their home, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So most people can just go to their banks and go, hey, what's my house now? I bought it for 800 3 years ago. It's worth 1.1 now. Let's get that 30 grand out and then do the construction loan for the granny flat. So a lot of people don't even know that they could do it right now, and they're thinking 150 grand's too much. I'd have to save up for years, but they could literally do it right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah.
I want to do it right now, mate.
We'll talk about it after.
I know I build it if you need one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's
From
awesome.
an investment point of view,
Yeah.
you just can't beat it.
Yeah.
You really can't. When you look at how much you got to borrow and how much rent you get, like, you're making money every single week.
Yeah.
And if you've got a mortgage, you put that on top of your mortgage, and it's just,
Yeah.
I don't have to educate you, but
Yeah.
it's a great investment.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially the current market and the rental crisis. There's people sleeping in cars and caravans, and they can't find rental properties. And adding a granny flat to your backyard, helping that cause and getting that rental return too. I think it's just incredible.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And Wally, we were talking earlier, and you kind of said that you were looking to delve into the tiny home space. If you can elaborate on that, and just give us the insider as to what's going on in that kind of space.
You heard it here first, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We often get asked to put granny flats in places where they just can't fit.
Yeah.
We've gone out to site, they've got such a tiny space, it doesn't fit, and you start talking to the family and you realise they just need accommodation. They need somewhere for a family person to live, and they can't build a granny flat. They can't afford a house extension or whatever the case may be. So just through research and so on, and just started seeing other trends, because I'm always looking at trends and seeing what's happening in the industry. Tiny homes have started to emerge, and it got us thinking, with the knowledge we know about building homes, why don't we delve into tiny homes? And so, yeah, as you mentioned, we're going through a bit of research and development at the moment in terms of costs and designs, and trying to work out how can we deliver tiny homes at an affordable rate. And, if you're not sure what tiny homes are, they're just basically little homes on trailers.
Yeah.
And because of that, and like I mentioned before, where we say to people, you've got no room to fit your granny flat, well, with tiny homes, there's no regulations.
Right.
It's considered to be a vehicle, not actually a building.
Wow.
There you go.
And so there's no rules that say you got to park your car 90 centimeters off the fence. You can go park this trailer anywhere you want on your property. And there are no rules and regulations around it. Wow. So all of a sudden it's opened up another market for people who can't build a granny flat, still want a tiny space to live in. And this is just even more compact than what granny flats are.
For sure. And what's that footprint like?
size-wise.
Size-wise,
So we're governed by RMS in terms of the width of laneways and bridges and so on. So the maximum width we can do is I think 2.4 or 2.5 meters.
Yep.
You could do up to 12 meters long, but that then becomes quite large haulage and things like that, trying to get trucks to deliver those. But a typical one's probably going to be 6 to 8 meters long.
Yeah.
And up to about 4.2 meters high. So that under New South Wales RMS guidelines allows us to drive it on the roads, and you can go under most bridges.
Wow.
And that's permissible. So
that's incredible.
yeah.
And that's how you get the place there. You literally drive it on a trailer there and then just park it up.
Yep.
Wow.
And then you pretty much plug in a power point, plug in a hose. You can connect LPG gas bottles.
Wow.
Connect an air conditioner if you want, solar panels, connect to a sewage point as well. Or again, we're even looking at completely off the grid tiny homes as well. Where again, solar panels,
Rainwater tanks.
rainwater tanks,
Yeah.
things like that. So
Like a big caravan.
yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's a glorified caravan. And in the same way we custom designed granny flats, we can come up with some really cool tiny homes with different facades and things like that. And yeah, obviously we're limited by the fact that they're moving on the roads as well. So you can't build a brick one, but you can do some really nice fancy cladding materials and colours and make them look quite interesting.
Yeah. And in terms of like livability, what's that comfort level like? I mean, how many beds would one person be able to fit in it?
Yeah.
Would it be like for a couple, for example? What's that market like?
It would be for, I'd say, a single person or a couple.
Yeah.
Because they're typically, if you look at a lot of them, they're either pull out sort of beds,
Right,
couch
okay.
that pulls out because of the limited space.
Yeah.
You got to be very creative. So a lot of those would have the fold up beds which you can pull down off the wall, or you pull it out from underneath the couch, or lofts. So a lot of them have actually lofts above your bathroom or kitchen, for example. There'll be like a ladder you can crawl up and just sleep in the loft space. So they're not big family homes. They're not designed to be. They're not meant to be. But it's great for, like I said, for the customers that have asked us for them.
Yeah.
It meets a purpose for them. It's just providing additional accommodation and somewhere to sleep and shower and cook and watch TV. It's a little comfortable, cozy space, and you can hook it up in your trailer and the back
Just
of your
drive
car
anywhere.
and drive around.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
The country's your backyard, basically, mate. So
Now we're thinking. If we can put an office in there, we're good to go.
Why not?
Exactly. Remote offices, mate. There you go. Tiny offices.
That's it.
There you go.
We talked about comfort as well. The thing is, like I said, because they're classified as vehicles and not as dwellings,
Yeah.
there's no requirement to provide insulated walls or things like that. But we've always said to keep with the quality of what we do, even though there's no requirement to, if we build tiny homes, and we will, they're always going to be meeting minimum requirements. We're still going to put the most efficient taps you can put in there and insulated walls and panels and things like that.
For sure.
Because at the end of the day, you're living in there. Despite what it's called, despite what it's categorized as, you're living in there. So may as well make it comfortable.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's incredible.
And do you think with these tiny homes that it's something that would kick off in any particular certain areas, or it could be available for anyone?
I'd say more rural.
Yep.
Just from the research we've done, it's because they got a lot of space as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
So even if you're in suburban Sydney, you're still going to have a driveway or a wide enough space to be able to drive it through to the backyard.
That's right.
There is no rules. Like I said, there are no rules for parking. So you could potentially put it in your front yard, but I imagine that's going to cause a stir.
Yeah. The
amongst
neighbours
and things like that.
That's
So,
right. Yep.
yeah, nothing's stopping you doing it, but I imagine it'll upset a few neighbours if you did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say rural areas, and even from the inquiries we've had and people we've spoken to, they even use them as weekenders.
Yeah, okay.
Because they can just literally drive it, park it there, and come and go as they please.
Wow.
They don't need permits and that stuff, so it's quite easy.
Airbnb and stuff around like the wine tours and things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Rent a tiny home.
Yeah.
Is there a market for that currently?
For renting them?
Yeah, renting them out and stuff.
Yeah, it's Airbnb, absolutely.
Right, there you go. So it's a whole nother universe. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always looking at ways of being innovative, I should say.
Yeah.
We started with granny flats. We moved into homes. Now this is the next sort of phase for us. And who knows what's next. We'll keep monitoring trends and see what people want. And because we have our own design and construction teams, well, we can adapt quite easily and make things happen. So, yeah.
And for the people that are thinking, I like what you guys are saying, but the numbers and stuff sort of don't make sense to me because I don't know things about granny flats. What would you reckon their first step should be? Reaching out to you guys and just seeing if their block's acceptable or get some ideas, or where should they go from here?
Yeah, I highly recommend they contact us first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we got our own, own due diligence process we go through. So we'll check, planning documents and council guidelines and come back and say, hey, yes, your block is suitable and this is what we think it'll cost. Rather than buying a block and then only then finding out you're bushfire affected and you can't build. So we get our customer service team know all the right questions to ask. So when somebody calls, they'll go through a whole series of questions, ask for certain documents. We can confidently tell the customer, hey, yes, your property is suitable, and we'll send somebody out, inspect the property and come back and say, hey, this is what we believe it's going to cost.
Yeah, for sure.
It's best to do that before you buy, because we do come across customers who come to us, say, great news, we bought a property, we're ready to build, and we're letting them down saying, well, unfortunately, your block's flood affected, did you know?
Yeah, right.
And, sometimes they don't know and we can't build. So, if you're spending that much money, you want to know what you can and can't do, and we provide that service. So,
And do you charge to find out if it works on their block or anything like that?
No, initially, no. Just from our, just through a desktop analysis, we've got certain programs we subscribe to, and we can just quite easily tell you what you can and can't do. And from that point on, once we've given you that confidence, you're ready to proceed, we can then give you a more formalised tender and start from there.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Just reach out and doesn't cost anything to find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
So then, let's say I'm an investor and I'm shopping around, contemplating of putting 2 dwellings on a site. It's already got a house, but I'm unsure if I could fit a granny flat on it. I just come see you, Wally, please check out this address, and then you'd come back and tell me, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Is that the basic?
Yeah, it's honestly that simple. And there are times where we don't know. Like, for example, the information we have isn't enough for us to do a full assessment.
Yep.
So say, for example, there's a big tree in your backyard. We don't know whether the council is going to approve the removal of that tree or not. So we can't say, yeah, for sure, you can build on that block.
Yep.
But we will let you know what the restrictions are or what potential hazards are there.
Okay.
So as you move forward, you know what to look out for. And as we go through the process, again, we identify these things and help you through whatever's required to get your plans approved. Yeah.
So then you just say, well, look, yeah, you could do the approval, but the tree's in the way. We've got to see council, get that removed.
Correct. And then we'll help you through that process as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's it for us today, Wally. That's been incredible. You've been amazing. There's been so much value shared. I feel like I need to pay you for this, but it is your business. So if anyone's interested in assessing their site, or if they're intending to build a granny flat as an investor, please reach out to Granny Flat Solutions, and they'll conduct a free due diligence for you. Danny?
Thanks again, Wally. I really appreciate that. I'm pretty keen to catch up with you after this. I've got about 3 million questions I want to ask you about my house now, which I'm sure you'll be able to help me find a solution. So thanks again for jumping on. It was really good, not only for our viewers, but for us as well.
Appreciate it.
To work with you moving forward and continue this relationship.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wally.
Thanks, Wally.
Thanks.